Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in for a little formative feedback on the roots of the Declaration of Independence and the branches of the Declaration of Independence. So we're on key concept 3.2 here again, and we're going to be focusing today on the historical thinking skills of interpretation and historical causation. So let's real quickly kind of read those and once again figure out what are these historical skills asking us. Interpretation is historical thinking involves the ability to describe, analyze, and evaluate and create diverse interpretations of the past as revealed through primary and secondary historical sources by analyzing evidence, reasoning, context, points of view, and frames of reference. So basically, the skill is can you read a primary or secondary historical source, okay? And can you basically evaluate it and create an interpretation of the past by that, okay? So today, obviously, we'll be looking at the Declaration of Independence, and we're going to be looking for um, you know how did the Enlightenment, for instance, from Locke and Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau, how did these guys how did their ideas get into the Declaration of Independence? Okay. Next one is historical causation. So historical causation involves the ability to identify, analyze, and evaluate multiple cause and effect relationships in a historical context, distinguishing between the long-term and proximate. Okay, so that's just basically saying that we want to look at, the ideas that go into the Declaration. So how did other people influence the Declaration? And also, kind of looking at the Declaration of Independence in a global context is, how did our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, how did they impact the rest of the world? Okay, so that's kind of the skills we wanted to be kind of using throughout this assignment. Okay, so what I want to do real quickly here, this podcast shouldn't take very long, is let's look at this graphic organizer here. Okay, essentially this is kind of the whole general idea of this assessment. Okay, um, we have all these Enlightenment thinkers here, and you might remember some of these guys from WAP if you took AP World History or even World History. But we have people like John Locke, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Voltaire, all of these very, very well-known, well-respected Enlightenment thinkers that were around during this period. Okay, and they are coming up with all these new ideas on politics and freedoms and all this kind of other stuff. Okay, and so all their ideas that they write down in their books or in their speeches or what have you, all of these ideas basically kind of filter across the Atlantic Ocean because of the printing press and the spreading of ideas. And American colonists like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, for instance, they all start to read these new ideas that are basically being developed across the pond, okay? And they buy into it, okay? And when the American Revolution begins, our founding documents, obviously, are heavily then influenced by these ideas that started in Europe during the Enlightenment. Okay, so the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, they're all, like I said, very heavily influenced by these Enlightenment ideas. Once our revolution is successful, then, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the ideas that we put down on paper that were influenced originally by the Enlightenment thinkers, they go on to then further influence other countries. Okay, so if you look at the Vietnamese, their Declaration of Independence draws on the ideas that were put forth in our Declaration of Independence, which is kind of ironic because when they're fighting for independence, they're fighting against the Americans, which is, like I said, that's kind of ironic. The French, shortly after our revolution, within years actually, the French rebel, and their Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen are based on the same liberties that we draw upon for our American Revolution, and the Haitians too. The Haitian Declaration of Independence is very similar to our Declaration of Independence. There's obviously some key differences here, but it very much is similar. Okay, so anyways, kind of moving down here, things that you should be focusing on. Uh, is basically just recognizing these Enlightenment philosophers, and then more importantly, what are their ideas? So with John Locke, what you should have found is, his idea is life, liberty, and property. He thinks those are God-given, unalienable, natural rights, whatever you want to call them. Thomas Jefferson obviously draws upon that in the Declaration of Independence, that all humans have God-given rights. We have Montesquieu, who is an Enlightenment philosopher that basically suggests that instead of the power of government being in the hands of one man, it is best that people push for a government that has a separation of powers. And if the power of government is separated into branches of government that have checks and balances, it'll be unlikely for tyranny to have its day. So if you look at the United States of America, our government as it's established, our Constitution set up a system known as federalism, where basically half the power of government is split up into the federal government and then the state governments. But even within the federal government, we see the power being split up into three branches. You have the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court. You have the legislative branch, which is Congress, and you have the executive branch, which is obviously the president. And all three of those branches have the ability to check one another. Okay, for instance, the Supreme Court can rule any law by Congress unconstitutional and strike it down. Okay, Congress can impeach the president or a Supreme Court justice if they do anything that is illegal or unsuitable to the office. And the president has the ability to veto any congressional act. So we see a government that is systematically put in place that is meant to make sure that not one branch is too powerful. We have Voltaire, okay, who's a French philosopher, and he pushes forth the ideas of freedom of speech and freedom of religion, okay? And we have Rousseau, who basically puts forth the idea that if a government does not respect the rights of its people, specifically those God-given rights, then yes, people have a right and a duty, in fact, to actually abolish that government, to overthrow that government. So we see all these ideas being put forth by these Enlightenment philosophers, and those heavily influence our founding fathers, and then obviously they create our founding documents, and then those founding documents, once again, they influence other countries. And so what you were supposed to have done in this assessment is look at these other countries, okay, and realize how we have influenced other nations, much like how we were influenced by people before us. So it kind of puts the American Revolution in a global context, which is kind of a cool thing. All right. So anyways, guys, I hope this little mini lesson helped. And obviously, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.